We got another 2-3 minutes to go now. When he's on air, let me know.
Live talk on dealing with the known by this is Mridula Ramesh, 6 p.m. 24th April.
And let him mute all the people, videos and things. You could do that as soon as come.
Hello, England. Same year, Paringla.
Two minutes to go. Sheikh? Sundar?
Sir?
Ready to go?
So yes, sir. 2 minutes, sir.
2 minutes. Where is the tech engineer? Is there online? Sheikh?
Yeah, he's an online, sir, but he's not talking.
Sir? Okay to go?
Hello.
Mridula madam, you can come online with you can open your video.
Yeah, I'll open my video. Do you want me to try my headphones or no?
No, it's quite clear, madam. Fine. Now it's quite clear. You're using a headphone now?
Yeah, I'm using my headphones now.
Now you speak without. Now you speak, madam, without lifting the mic. Just speak now.
I'll try. Is it clear now?
No, I think you have made it a little louder. It's not earlier was clear.
Is it clearer now?
No, madam. You remove the headphone. Without headphone, you're much clearer.
Okay, fine.
Little bit of echo that will manage.
Okay, thank you.
Now it's perfect, madam. Sundar, ready to go?
Sundar sir is on mute, sir.
Anyway, it's on air, both live on Facebook,
Yeah.
even on YouTube.
I'm checking it, sir. Simultaneously, I'm checking.
Okay, simultaneously. Okay, good. All the best. Keep collecting the questions. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Anyway, let's go ahead now. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very warm welcome to another edition of our evening talk. Very warm welcome to all the viewers who have joined us just now on the Zoom. There are also plenty of viewers who are joining us on the live webinar, live on YouTube and live on Facebook. Our endeavor has been, since the time lockdown, we want to connect with members of MMA regularly from morning till the evening, keep them engaged with various management activities, to keep them enriching in terms of mind, and we don't want them to keep looking at news and get worried about what's happening. Anyway, as Albert Elbiston, future, anyway it comes. You don't worry, and we have to face it actually what it comes. So what we are starting is from morning 7:30 in the morning. We start with the yoga with Sri Ravi Shankar. Thereafter, with 2 hours, we send you a quiz that become real hit actually. From 500, we have taken it to 1,000 entries now, and is growing in popularity. A lot of people are getting addicted to the quiz, which is very, very good. When I think we open, at least we can be a master of quizzing rather than getting into trouble, which is not happening. Then at 11 o'clock every morning, we deliver a very nice talk each one of day. It's become also very popular. Thereafter, from 1 o'clock to about 4 o'clock, we are coming out with a number of certificate courses, workshop. In some of the workshops, we are doing it free, complimentary. Please look at my website for some of the complimentary workshop for you, which is very, very good for you. And you can just log in and join. You want to register just into your name, and you will be given a login ID. Then thereafter, the 6 o'clock, we are bringing some outstanding thought leaders to speak to you. One of the thought leaders is going to be talking to you on different subject, and I'm going to just while now I'm going to tell you what all happening in next few days. By any chance you missed your inbox, because we are sending too many emails. I know that, but since we are doing too many events, too many emails are inevitable. And I think my record, my guys said we have sent almost about 20-25 lakhs emails in the last few days to our members, and a couple of lakhs of SMSs just to remind them in time, tell them in the morning, and tell them about YouTube, tell them about connectivity, tell them about yoga. So we are engaging you with non-stop constantly. Our endeavor is to keep you engaged on these difficult times, and keep you have your views and your ideas are most welcome, because you are the one who is going to tell us what you're doing is how you're liking it and what do you want the way forward, how you want to renovate it, how you want to take it forward. Very, very important for us. As the way move forward, we have to think innovatively, we have to think differently. Now, let me briefly, quickly tell you what are the events coming up next few days, so that you don't miss them by any chance. Each one of them are very good. Tomorrow, same time, 6 o'clock, the theme is Be a Diamond in the Sky. Mr. Vijay Parasati, brand specialist, informative coach, is going to be talking to us. In difficult times, how do you really enhance your brand? How you reposition your brand? There are a lot of talks coming about things. People may not go for brand and people may go for cheap goods. So how do you manage all these things? Then is going to happen tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. On 27th April, we got again a very good event in the morning at 11 o'clock, live panel discussion on data on the move, cybersecurity issues and challenges. Two outstanding minds in the field of cybersecurity, because these are time where you're using extensive data, all moving, so data online. Better know Vijay Shankar, cyber law, techno, legal information and data security consultant and author of number of books. He's going to be there, one of the panelists. And Ritesh Bhatia is a cyber crime investigator, cybersecurity consultant, and founder director of V4WEB and cybersecurity TEDx speaker. He's another thing. So we're going to have a feast of a time. All your questions, whatever doubt, keep them ready so that the panelists will be more than happy to attend your concern. And we're also bringing a different innovative programs during this time, because we don't want to every time bore you with number of talks. We are bringing a musical webinar. The musical webinar is going to have what we think music and mindfulness. This is happening on the 6 p.m. on the 28th of April. And Mr. Giri Sharma, who is a principal consultant of a Beeline. Along with him, we got three outstanding singers, Uni Nair, Geeta Jairam, and Ramakrishnan. So you're going to have a feast of a time. Don't miss it, 6 p.m. On the 28th of evening. Then on 29th at 11 a.m., again, we have a interesting talk, responsible business conduct and supply chain intermediaries. That is already done. That is not there. Sorry. Then at 6 p.m. on the 30th of April, we have live talk on COVID stress management. We have a Swamiji, he is from Sri Ramakrishna Mission, Gujarat. He is going to be talking to us. And on the 1st of May at 11 o'clock, again, we have an interesting talk by Shravan Subramaniam. He is MD of Roche Diagnostic, and Aarti Shivanand, partner, J. Sagar Associates, will be in conversation with him. This is happening on the 1st May. On the 1st May evening, we have an outstanding event for you, which you all just block your diary, not to miss the event. Marketing for the future. The person who is going to be talking is inside is Mr. C.K. Ranganathan, founder, managing director of Kevin Care. The person who is going to be conversing another billion mind in the field of marketing is David Appasamy, is the head of brand strategy at Social Beat. So it's going to be an interesting fireside chat on the evening of 6 o'clock at 1st May. On the 2nd of May, again, we have an interesting event. Talk success story, how it was done by Selambam 3000 years by Bharat Bala, who is a screenwriter, producer and director, along with Aishwarya Manivannan, who is a world Selambam champion. He's going to be talking on the 2nd of May. Besides that, we are also doing number of events for the students. On the 29th, there going to be an event for the students at 9 o'clock, career planning and how the way forward, the campus corporate. There's a speaker from Manu is going to talk from Chicago. And we have talked almost 50 college partners. We expect more than 5,000 management students to result to this event. And another interesting event, the date is not finalized. It's all been, the content is finalized. Mr. M.K. Narayanan, former governor of West Bengal and former national security advisor, is agreed to speak on the subject geopolitical and geoeconomic consequences of COVID-19. And this is going to be again a 5-stage chat. And we are going to have Arsh V. Pant, is head of strategy, studies, OR of New Delhi, is going to be in conversation with him. So we have lined up some least brilliant programs for you till the 3rd of month, and where hopefully the lockdown is going to be lifted and you're going to be free and as usual go do a number of work. We are always very optimistic we are going to do that. Coming to today's topic, dealing with the known unknown in the COVID world, and by Ms. Mridula Ramesh. This is a subject which we are all not very concerned about. The future is very uncertain. We are not very sure about what is going to happen with businesses. The small businesses are really struggling. Each of the individuals are struggling. And also the people who are urbanization, who are laborers who have come from different part of the people to come and work, they're also struggling, and we have to find some innovative ways. I know some of the people, the major consultants started really advising major companies, including everybody should do. You have to plan out a number of scenario planning. So what is going to happen? The lockdown is going to be extended. What is going to happen in different scenarios? So when you do a scenario planning and start forecasting what is going to happen, it will be helpful. And also, it's very easy to say that your cash-rich companies will do well. But cash-rich or not cash-rich, ultimately you need money earning. Incoming money has to be there to sustain the long-term run. The number of issues are coming: deferred demand, destroyed demand. How is it going to be activated? People are giving confusing signal. People say people are now got used to very simple living because of lockdown. They are not. They understood how much money they have been wasting on their food and other equipment. So that means our FMCG will get affected. I don't know. Then they're also telling people will start living frugal, and they may not really go forward for a very fancy brand. The number of items are going there, and today we have an outstanding speaker who is going to attend to some of these issues and make us understand what exactly thing. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mridula Ramesh. She doesn't need an introduction. She was a part of a team MMA number of occasions, and she was also, I had the privilege of closely working with her as she was the president. She was the chairman of a Women Convention Committee. And just a brief introduction before I hand over the session to Mridula Ramesh is very warm welcome to you, madam. And she's a part of Indian Angels and Chennai Angels. She is graduate with distinction. Sorry, let me start from the beginning. She is a part of Head of Strategy Studies of ORF and Mr. Yes, Mridula Ramesh. Yes, now it has come on the screen at profile. Let me briefly explain to you. She is a founder of Sundaram Climate Institute, a focus on waste and water solutions, and also on education. She's also an angel investor in Cleantech startups, and over 12 startups have been successfully launched by her and doing very well. She's a part of Indian Angels and Chennai Angels, as I mentioned to you earlier. And she also graduated with distinction from Carnegie University and also an MBA from Kellogg's School of Management. And before moving to India, she worked with McKinsey in USA, and she got a great insight on management, which she really used when moving to India. And she is also teaches postgraduate students at climate change at GLIM. She is a regular columnist in Hindu, Mint, Bloomberg, number of other number of leading newspapers. She's also executive director of the Sundaram Textiles, and she lives in a net zero based house. I think quite sure, madam, you will share with us what is the net zero based house, what you have done. Maybe many of us will have to start doing this. Very warm welcome to you, madam, and may I request people who have joined us to please join me in welcoming Ms. Mridula Ramesh, and you can type it out. Very warm welcome to Mridula Ramesh. Now over to you, madam. We are all keenly looking forward to hearing you. Over to Mridula Ramesh.
Thank you, Group Captain. It's always a pleasure working with you. I've been part of many organizations, or I've seen the amount of care and effort you personally put into it. So why things go very smoothly when you run it. Thank you, and thank you to your team. Thank you. I think this is a very troubled time for all of us. And honestly, there is no script. We can say that about life in general, but I think we're all in uncharted waters right now. And like many of you, what I'm trying to do is try to make sense of what's going on. Not just the pandemic, but our reaction to it. About this lockdown, which is suddenly spread. I don't know whether that's intentional, but this lockdown that has spread so suddenly and completely over all of us. So to just to look at the framework, and I'm going to try and share my screen and see whether this works. Okay, can people see me? I don't hear anything, so it should be working. So it's good to use a framework. And the framework I'm going to try and adopt is something that Donald Rumsfeld, who was in 2002 the Secretary of Defense in America, he divided any issue, like an evolving issue like COVID, into 4 buckets. What we know about it, which is called the facts of the case. What we don't know, which are the questions that can be raised. What we think we know, but we're not quite sure of, that's the intuition, you have a gut feel about it. And what we know we don't know. That's sort of the exploratory blue sky thinking that consultants do. So I'd like to spend a little time today on the known knowns, the facts of the case, come to a shared understanding, then talk a little bit about what we need to answer the outstanding question on COVID and how that should guide us on what to expect in the next 6 months. And then look at a little bit of exploration in the future, right? So with that, what are the facts we know about COVID? first thing I want to say is, in my understanding, a lot of the action that the government is taking and a lot of the enterprises are taking are almost entirely of what is known, only the known knowns of the virus, which are the facts of the virus. So we know this is a novel virus, that is, our body hasn't encountered something like this before. It's similar in mechanism and in its DNA makeup to the earlier coronavirus that caused SARS. And this understanding is what is driving the treatment efforts and in the efforts in finding a vaccine. But what is really interesting, something we know but may not be commonly known, and something I'd like to share with you, is that there are about 186 RNA viruses. This SARS coronavirus is an RNA virus, and there are 186 known RNA viruses that are known to infect human beings. And on every year, 2 new human infective RNA viruses come up. And most of these are zoonotic in origin, which means they have jumped from an animal to a human being. This particular virus is supposed to have jumped from a pangolin to a human. And how do we know this? So scientists have sequenced the RNA of the pangolin coronavirus and the one that's causing this particular pandemic, and they found 90% genetic commonality. And so, when we know that there are 2 new viruses coming up every year, which are jumping from animal to man, and many of these are coming up in circumstances similar to wet markets, why are we not clamping down on wildlife trade? That's all the known knowns, but this question I don't have an answer for, so I'll leave with you. So let's go to the next set of what we know. What do we know about how dangerous this virus is and how it spreads? We know it can be older, it can be fatal for older populations, especially those with comorbidities such as diabetes or hypertension. We know there is no vaccine. We know there is no confirmed, consistent cure for this virus. We know that because the very sick need extensive, intensive care, that hospital capacities can quickly be overwhelmed. We know that this virus spreads through droplets or aerosols or infected objects. But for most people, we also know that this virus is a mild infection. And this is so much so that for a significant proportion of the population, they're asymptomatic. You and I could have the virus right now and we may not even know about it. And because of this understanding, even though they remain asymptomatic, they can still spread it. So this is why governments across the world have come up with social distancing norms. And when that didn't work, they came up with lockdowns to prevent hospitals from being overwhelmed. And because we realized we need to ramp up capacity, railway coaches have become isolation wards, enterprises have ramped up on production of masks, sanitizers, personal protective equipment, and ventilators. So until now, India has been roughly adopting a developed economy playbook, right? But India is very different from aging Western societies. India is much younger and much less wealthy. So, for instance, 1 in 5 people in Italy is above the age of 65. The same proportion for India is 1 in 20. The Indian economy has a far more informal blue-collar caste to it, where work from home is not a feasible option. So in development conversations, I've heard of many people bring up India's demographic dividend as a source of strength. It's should we be looking at India's demographic differences when creating our own playbook? Again, that's a question I will leave with you. Now, what are the last set of facts that I want to that we know? One is, and I'm not doing this very well. Okay, so a few months ago, in what looked like a lifetime ago, I was in Dharavi. Now, Dharavi, after Slumdog Millionaire, has started something called poverty tourism tours, where people take tours to go into Dharavi to see how the poor live. I actually went there to figure out how waste and water work, it was quite an eye-opening experience. But one thing is, this is how Dharavi looks. And, in this small line of houses, there are about 100 to 200 people living. And about 70% of people living in Dharavi use community toilets, which means they share a toilet. And, when I was walking, I saw a line of men, as it happened, just waiting in line with a lota in hand for their turn. I think social distancing is an impossible dream in those circumstances. The second fact we know that we already spoke about India's informal footprint. That is, many of these people, your tea kada karan, your putti kadai, your neighborhood tailor, these are people, if they don't go to work, they don't earn an income, right? And then lastly, this is a survey done in an industry group in India. And we found that, many companies, even large companies, don't have cash to pay for anything by the end of this month. And they're seeing orders cancelled everywhere. So there is tremendous impact. Amongst the known knowns, there is a tremendous impact across the board, non-health related impacts because of this virus. So I think the government is well aware of this. So they've released a number of measures to help support this. But the problem is there are three groups that can't be reached by those measures. One is domestic benefits like ration and gas, all of that, reach homes. And the migrants don't live in their homes, so they don't get benefited by those. Also, undocumented populations don't get benefited by those. And migrants and undocumented populations tend to be large groups in India. So that's one group that's underserved. The second group is informal businesses. Many of them fulfill an important need, but they're hard to reach, and they're intentionally hard to reach because they occupy platforms, they are encroaching water bodies or lakes, they release untreated effluent into the environment, they don't pay their workers benefits, so they make themselves hard to reach so that the official people can't formally force compliance. Today, because they're hard to reach, they're hard to help also. The other group, I would say, who are hurt are farmers, right? And I've heard that raising MSP is a good way to help farmers. And I want to share a bit of government data with you. Now, the government does surveys to find out in a group of farmers, how many of them have actually heard of MSP. And for those of you who may not know, MSP is the minimum support price that is supposed to work for a given crop. Now, for paddy, which is India's biggest crop, only as per government data, only a third of all farmers, so if you had 100 farmers, only 30 or 33 farmers were even aware of MSP. And for marginal farmers, who are most farmers in India, 6 to 18% were able to sell their crop at MSP. Okay, now if we come to cotton, only 5 to 8% of farmers, or 5 to 8 farmers in 100 are able to sell their crop at MSP. And here I can actually talk from experience, because we buy cotton from, to run in our spinning mills. So this data is somewhat seems to be genuine. So if you want to increase MSP, fine, but if you expect it to go and help most of your farmers, I think that at least the government data seems to suggest that that may not happen. There are other ways by which farmers have been hit. I saw a survey done on 200 villages in UP that shares that markets are still shut, but I think the government realizes that, so they've started releasing farming operations from there, because I think otherwise the crop would rot. So this is but all of our action, all of government action is on these facts, which is the known knowns, right? But there are significant unknown unknowns. So I want to spend the rest of this discussion talking about three things. What about the known unknowns, right? What are the main question about COVID? Second, there is a major issue about our approach, which I'd like to talk about. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the future. Okay, so let me talk about the one question that I think is on most people's mind when they ask about COVID. Like, how is this thing going to end, right? Like, what's going to happen in the next 6 months? And I think I'd like to split this into 4 more questions, right? And here I have 3 of them. The first question is there a treatment? The second question is, will there be a vaccine? If so, when? Third, will this thing come back in winter? And fourth, how do we think about testing? Right? So let's go about each one. So is there a treatment? I read something funny recently that said, your preference for treatment actually reflects where on the ideological spectrum you fall. If you liked a particular drug called remdesivir, it signaled that you were a liberal. But if you went for something like hydroxychloroquine, it meant you were a Trump supporter. We had some bad news today morning. The first human trial on remdesivir was a failure. It didn't work. On hydroxychloroquine, we know it has problems with, it causes some damage to your retina. We know it has heart problems. And the trials that have been done on hydroxychloroquine, some are positive, but they're not gold standard. But the good news, if you want to think, is that the entire might of the pharmaceutical industry, I think the Lancet reported 300 trials of different things to work on this, is on this thing. So with any luck, we should have an answer for this question of will there be a treatment in 3 months? And with any luck, with all fingers crossed, there should be something, hopefully. The more important question is, will there be a vaccine, right? Vaccines are tricky. I think we've spent a lot of money on trying to develop an AIDS vaccine, and there's nothing to show for it. I mean, not nothing to show for it. We don't have a vaccine yet. I live in Madurai, and dengue is endemic here, which means it's present all the time. And it's something that personally worries me. So I've been following this vaccine for more than a decade. And this has always been in phase 2. So it's always almost there. And after years, Sanofi finally came out with a vaccine called Dengvaxia. But they came with caveats. The vaccine was recommended for use only for those aged between 9 and 45, and only for those who had gotten dengue before. Because if someone who didn't have dengue before took this particular vaccine, they could have a serious case of dengue, which is not good. This is almost like saying, look, I'll develop a COVID-19 vaccine for anybody below 45. It's not an ideal situation. Now, as per Gavi, which is a vaccine alliance, there are 5 to 6 COVID vaccine candidates in human trials. The leading vaccine is actually a Chinese vaccine, which may explain a lot of geopolitics going on right now. There is a much talked about Oxford vaccine that has just entered human trials. But I want to say something that this guy called David Nabarro, who worked in the UN for a long time coordinating their action against different pandemics and epidemics such as Ebola and H1N1. He said, you don't necessarily develop a vaccine that is safe and effective against every virus. For the foreseeable future, we're going to have to find ways to go about our lives with this virus as a constant threat. Okay, so the news is, at least for the next 6 months, I wouldn't hold my breath that a vaccine would come. If it comes, it's a bonus and we can thank God for it, but we shouldn't plan our lives around it. So given that, that leads me to the third question, or the third known unknown. So winter is coming, and is the virus likely to come along with it? And the likely answer is yes. And why I say that is how other viruses like this one has behaved. I'm going to use 3 examples. One is not on the chart here. The first one is a study done in Michigan, which looked at other coronaviruses and found that coronaviruses tend to be sharply seasonal, with peak infections happening in January or February. Then if we look at the case of our own, not our own, but the pandemic Spanish flu that happened in 1918. That first hit India in May, and it was dismissed as a very mild disease. When it came back in September, it killed upwards of 12 million people within 3 months. Right? And the third example, which I'm going to use, which is this chart on top here, and I don't know whether you can all see it. This looks at influenza data over 6 years, and it again shows that the peaks tend to be in December to February. And I've heard doctors refer to this as the season. So these viruses tend to be strongly seasonal, and if this coronavirus behaves like other viruses, it too is likely to come back in December, or likely to come back in winter. The second point I want to bring out of this is the second two graphs below, which show the effect of heat and humidity on the SARS coronavirus that caused SARS. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that the SARS virus and this one are very similar, both genetically and in how they attack the body. So, we can use that as a model. And what we see is there is a strong impact of both heat and humidity, and especially when they both act together on the virus, and the infectivity of the virus. And here is where it gets interesting, right? For once, and for someone who's in climate change, you don't know how rare this is. Our climate might actually be a source of competitive advantage, right? So to see how much of an advantage our climate can be, we should be seeing trials by, just trials and trials and trials coming out of India saying, how susceptible is this virus to heat and humidity? Because, if it comes again in winter, which looks likely, and if we don't have a vaccine by then, which looks likely, then it's your guess is as good as mine of whether our economy and whether we and as individuals in the society can take another lockdown like this. But if we can't, we'll need that kind of data, the temperature sensitivity and the humidity data. We need very good, very granular data to understand how a nuanced action can be. And, this is really, we cannot, rather than thinking of a single lockdown, we need to think of a nuanced microclimate-based lockdown, which might be more palatable. The last question I want to talk about is what about testing? I apologize for my spelling mistake. So the test that is of interest is actually something called an antibody test, which tests for a type of antibody called IgG, which says whether you've been exposed to this, a particular illness or not. IgG presence, I want to say, doesn't mean that you're always immune to the disease. So, if you're exposed to it, you can't get it again. Again, looking at the SARS IgG data, immunity tends to last for 2 or 3 years. And the hope is this one behaves similar to the SARS virus. Added evidence for this comes from the fact that plasma therapy, where when someone has been cured, you take their blood, you take plasma from it, which contains antibodies, you put it into someone who's sick, and they recover. You've had anecdotal evidence that that this works, but you can't be sure that the antibodies is what is driving it. But this seems to suggest that there are protective antibodies against this, and the doubt comes from the fact that some of these COVID positive cases, after getting cured, they've relapsed again. But again, people are studying this as we speak, and we should have some clarity over the coming weeks. But what is more interesting is that antibody tests are not all the same, right? Some of them tend to be wildly inaccurate. Again, I would say this is a tremendous opportunity for India. Germany used its own domestically developed and tested antibody tests and it's using it to slowly reopen its economy. India has the capability to produce large quantities of these antibody tests. This is something we should be doing rather than importing it. And, this is something that might help guide the reopening of our economy. So here, that's the 4 main things that I wanted to talk about, which is, there is no treatment, but with any luck, we'll have something, hopefully, in the next few months. A vaccine is unlikely by winter when this virus, if it behaves like other viruses similar to it, will come again. And an antibody test seems to be a good way to go in terms of thinking how to think about keeping our economy open at the same time. If you notice, in my speech, I've been trying to balance multiple interests. And that's something that we have not done a great job of. And whether or not we're suffering from COVID-19, I would argue we are suffering from a severe case of something you can call a selective dashboardism. And what I mean by that is this. I think, okay. So what I mean by selective dashboardism is that all of us have heard that cough, cough message on COVID, right? We have a dashboard highlighting every case and every death of COVID, right? And if some of you are like me, you'll get up in the morning, go to this website, see the cases, then go in the night, multiple times you check and you see what's going on with COVID. But the thing is, we don't have a dashboard for hunger. We don't have a dashboard for TB or dengue. You know, we don't have how many cases, how many deaths there are on a daily basis by city, by neighborhood in a nice map that everybody can see. Every day in this lockdown, there are enterprises that are going under or going into a coma. Right? We don't have a dashboard for those. One of the things that really affects me, because my mother and my aunt are both pediatricians, and they talk about a time when measles used to fill wards and wards and wards of children out of with measles before a vaccine came up, is the public health infrastructure is getting so stressed that childhood vaccination schedules are being put, you know, either being given a go by. My aunt did mention that IAP, the Indian Association of Pediatrics, has said that those should stay. But if the government machinery is overtaxed, it's not going to happen. Or if parents are too scared to take their children to the doctor's hospital, it's not going to happen. A measles epidemic is something that is really frightening, and we need to think about, you know, by having only one dashboard up there and not all these other dashboards up there, we are optimizing on a single parameter. Yes, this lockdown is saving lives. It is definitely saving COVID lives, but we are making trade-offs, right? If a measles epidemic comes up because of, you know, vaccine schedules being missed, we are making that trade-off. And to our human minds, a horrific quick death by virus is unacceptable, but a death by 1,000 cuts under lockdown maybe because it's indivisible, maybe more acceptable. But I think we need to understand, by just focusing on one parameter, we may not be making the most optimal decision for our society as a whole. So now to the future. I mean, I think all of us go through some point in this where we say, you know, is this ever going to end? And are we ever going to get out of this? I'm working on my next book on water, and I've spent the last few weeks rereading material related to the epidemics of India. And in 1876, there was a terrible famine that hit the Madras presidency, where many of us are sitting right now. And, you know, millions died. In the decades that followed, we lost millions more to famine, to the 1918 pandemic. We've lost millions in short periods of time, and we've survived. And that tells me that, you know, we'll get through this too. But when we get through this, we need to plan for the kind of future we would like to have. And I have two things to say, which is what we should think of now and what we should think of for the next 3 to 5 years. For now, I will talk of communication. I think in this age of WhatsApp, you know, 2 hours ago, we just heard that we're going to have shutdown 4 or 5 cities in Tamil Nadu. And, you know, you keep getting hit by news. You're open, you're shut, you're open, you're shut. And that doesn't help that much. And if we don't get centralized, if it would be nice to have a portal. I know all of us are going to the government and asking for help. If we could also ask, hey, can you just put a portal where we know what the status is at any given time? That would be helpful. The second thing is we've done a magnificent job of communicating fear. Right now, we have to use that same power and imagination in communicating recovery. And I really hope we're up to that task. But as for the future, this for the first time, I'm really going to talk with some hope. We have a once in a lifetime opportunity to reset. And that's for two reasons. One, global supply chains are shifting, right? We've all been hurt to varying degrees, some of us much more than others, by this lockdown. And when so many people have been hurt, human nature is we need to see a villain. And because the virus was first identified there, because of its opacity and how it shares data, because of its handling of wet markets before and after, China is a country that many tend to have some resentment towards. And that one offshoot of that resentment is that supply chains may move away from there. Japan has already started it, announced billions in incentives to reshore manufacturing and move it away from China. And this may be repeated by other countries. India can stand to gain if we play our cards right. Because what I want to say is, supply chain moves tend to be really expensive, right? You need to build buildings, you need to shift machinery, you need to hire people, you need to break links and reconnect links. It's a pain. So most companies will do it maybe once in a lifetime. And when they're taking up such an expensive action, they'll want something more than not just China. And one of the things they will look for, one of the things that they will increasingly look for is climate and water risks. For India, that might involve asking if a unit is susceptible to flood or drought. Now, the 2011 Thai floods, Thailand was at that point a very important link in the global automotive supply chain. And the 2011 Thai floods cost the auto industry upwards of $46 billion, right? Now, the Chennai floods, all of you know far more than I do, that also impacted the auto companies and other factories in Chennai. And the Chennai water crisis last year saw water enter the income statements of many companies for the first time. They were actually paying a pretty heavy price for water. And it more than paying a price alone, water scarcity saw disruptions. That map you see is from WRI. And a study by WRI, the World Resources Institute, showed that many of India's largest thermal power plants saw a shutdown, one or more shutdowns between 2013 and 2016, which lost them about $1 billion. And that's a lot of money. So when, say, ex-Japanese companies looking to shift from China, they're unlikely to do it in a place which exposes that plant to climate and water risks. And that's important for India because A, those risks are manageable, especially water risks are manageable if you make the investments, the right investments. And, you don't want to make this shift and see your plant go under. So this is something we want to fix right now. If you want added incentive to want to fix this, think of investor incentives, right? Like there is one of the world's largest investors, like BlackRock, which controls trillions of dollars, has said they will not look at companies that don't make climate and water disclosures. If you want a third incentive to do this, COVID is supposed to have cost the global economy trillions of dollars in damages. The climate and water risks also causes the global economy trillions of dollars of damages, not in months, but within 5 years. And unlike COVID, this thing is going to keep growing. So, for governments and companies, etc., when you're starting to spend money and invest, etc., you're throwing in money now, but throw in money that will actually give you returns 5 years later also. It's not throwing money now which will go down the drain within 5 years. You might as well, if you're spending so much money, you might as well spend it on assets that will see us stronger over the short and medium term and make us attractive candidates for global supply chains. Apart from risk, I also want to talk about changing customer preferences. Over the last few weeks, I've been asked a lot about climate and, is this good for climate? And because people are hearing bird song, and we're all seeing the night sky clear and breathing in clean air, have we all changed? So I've heard multiple CEOs and thought leaders that virus will bring in sustainable living. By the way, these are paintings by my kids about a kingfisher which came for the first time to our house. Perhaps we will change, but perhaps not. Humans have a remarkable capacity to sort of adjust to whatever environment we're in. So just as we're appreciating bird song and clear skies now, when the economy starts, we'll adapt to honks and cloudy skies. The virus has certainly revealed the awesome power of nature, but human memory is short. Look at China has already opened its west markets. On a more encouraging note, companies, schools, and universities have realized that working and learning from home doesn't necessarily sacrifice quality or effectiveness for several functions, but it actually costs less and is more climate friendly. Now, if this takes out, that's a great green way of reimagining our economy. And with luck, we might even improve our female workforce participation because it's so much easier for women to work from home. A powerful voice that I want to talk about is actually Philip Kotler, who's considered by many to be the father of marketing. And he recently wrote a paper that said, the virus is going to change the way people consume. And it sort of builds on existing trends such as minimalism, no clutter, climate action, circular economy. And what it essentially means is people are going to consume less. And that's an important lesson that companies need to take away as they start planning for getting back into life. I'm going to end with two stories from my own experience. One is something, Sundaram Climate Institute, which I run, we study lakes and tank systems in Tamil Nadu. And what we find that many of these tanks and lakes are stunningly beautiful, but they don't have infrastructure. I think we can all agree that tourism and travel is not going to come back in a hurry. But leisure, people will still need time for leisure, and I feel local tanks can fill that need if they're given the right infrastructure. So we did a study around Kodaikanal Lake, which is what this is, and we actually counted the number of shops and the number of people working in the shops. And we found that this single lake, just around the periphery of the lake, provides 700 jobs through the year. It swells to about 1,300 during the season, and tens of crores of revenue. This is a smaller tank. This is at Teppakulam in Madurai. It just got water after 40 years when they cleared the encroachments. Within a month, this was providing about 23 to 40 jobs and about 1 crore in annual revenue. And this over the next year, you're going to hear your kids are going to complain, where do I go for holiday? You're going to be worrying about jobs, and you're going to be, I think people who are settling here will be worried about groundwater. And tank tourism is something that addresses all three, because if the people around here get a job from the tank, they're actually interested in keeping the tank healthy and filled with water. The last thing I want to talk about is India's startup economy. Large parts of it, according to surveys, are on ventilator, and there's a large clamoring for money, right? This is a great time for government and investors, again, to think about where they're putting their money. It's better to put something that will give you dividends a few years down the line, like health and the circular economy, water resilience, etc. To give you an example, there are several startups that are working today in helping startups and NGOs that are helping farmers bypass closed markets and middlemen and reach customers directly. And they're building farmer resilience. What the thought I'd like to leave you with is, today everybody's clamoring for attention. And they always say the crying child gets the milk. But why not this once we give the milk to the worthy child rather than the loudest child? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, madam. It's a great insight. I will request all the people, audience, to share their question in the chat box so that they're more than happy. I also got a couple of questions from the people who have been watching this program live on webinar and also YouTube and Facebook. So the number of questions that come as when we go through the questions, and I will request audience who are on Zoom, please type your question so that it'll be easy for me to pick up and request Mr. Mridula Ramesh to answer these questions. And our first question, I also take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Peter Rimmel, who is the head of Conrad Stifting India. Is our partner who has been a great supporter of MMA is there. Very warm welcome to Mr. Peter. If you have any questions, please come online. We'll be more than happy. Mridula Ramesh will be more than happy to answer your question. The first question, madam, actually you said there's so much of uncertainty about the when is going to end, when is going to vaccine is come. Nobody's sure about it actually. Now, under these circumstances, what is your advice to various industries, individuals, in terms of scenario planning? If they do some scenario planning and start plotting what's going to happen, do you think it will help? I keep hearing every company organizer doing a scenario planning. What's your views on that? You're unmute, madam, please.
Yeah, I did my first Zoom class a few days ago, and that's when I realized, I'm officially middle-aged now because I'm getting technologically challenged. So, I think when you look at scenario planning, and this is where you have different metrics that you're going to say. Are we going to have? Is this thing going to come back in winter? You could have a scenario where you say yes, or you could have a scenario where you say no. If you say yes, then are you going to see a lockdown? Yes or no, right? And I think that's very important. But I also, today a lot of the, and one of the things you're going to ask is this government going to lock down? Are other governments going to lock down? Then if you have the capability, do you have multiple plant locations where you can start prioritizing where to produce? I think scenario planning depends on who you are. Like a Pottikada guy can't scenario plan. He has very little capacity, whereas a large multinational corporation can scenario plan. I don't know whether I'm answering your question.
Thank you. I think, yes, we need more. I think maybe next time we'll tell you to make a presentation, what is scenario planning, how to really do. And I know you're an expert, being a McKinsey background, will be able to do that. Now, we also have Mr. Peter Rimmel. I think before I got a couple of questions, Mr. Peter, would like to share your thoughts and your comments or your questions on the thing which you have been listening. And thank you for joining. Over to Mr. Peter.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, madam, for your presentation. You have turned, for me, lots of the unknown into known. And that's what I was hoping from this webinar, not that at the end, the known turns into the unknown, no, the other way around. So you made a statement about India's, let me say, benefit of the demographic dividend of a young population, what is less threatened by the virus compared to aging societies in Western Europe or the United States. On the other hand, we have, if I look into Western Europe, probably a better healthcare system than that would be in India. So maybe it makes up for it. But if we look at the figures, it seems not to. If you see at the death rates in Italy, Spain, the United States, Germany, rather moderate, but there it is much down. So I'm not sure if that is a balance. But the question is, are those figures we have in India, but for this large population are relatively low? Can we trust those figures in comparison to other ones, or might they be much higher and we just don't know them?
No, I think that's an excellent question, and I'll try to answer it. I don't even want to talk about the number of cases, because at some level I think that's irrelevant. Both because of the capacity to test and because of the accuracy of the tests themselves. What I think is far more interesting is the number of deaths and the trajectory of number of deaths. India, unlike China, you cannot hide a death, right? Even a death in a small place, very difficult to hide. I mean, this is something that will come through over and over again. If you look at the trajectory of deaths in India, that gives you a far more heartening picture than anything else. And that's why I feel, I'm not saying that the young are immune. They most certainly aren't. Actually, because the the predominance of ACE2 receptors is higher in the young, they may actually get infected more easily. But they seem to be more resilient in the face of the disease given the limited data that we have, right? And what that just means is, I'm just saying, look, we need to consider multiple things. India needs to develop its own playbook. And the trajectory of deaths is giving me reason for hope.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Peter, for
I
joining.
think it gives hope for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a question from one of the viewers from the Facebook, madam. That is, Sweden has adopted an approach that is entirely different from other countries in letting the society develop a herd immunity over a period of few months and not restricting the movement of people. Data says that the rate of spread is similar to other European countries. Do you think such an approach will work in India?
Okay, I'm not an epidemiologist, so I don't know. Okay, so let me just come up there and say this. But what I would recommend is there is an excellent video of a presentation by the person advising Sweden, and I will share that link with you. He speaks very, very well on that particular thing. See, it's a very risky thing, right? If you were the prime minister of the country, would you just say, okay, let's let this fly? I mean, you made everyone really, really scared. And now you just say, okay, let's just get infected. This looks broadly okay. I think, it's politically very difficult decision to take.
Yes.
But Sweden has taken it, and I would advise you watching that video.
Yes, there's always a debate on life versus livelihood. Now, there's another question from one of the viewers from our Facebook only. Madam, you spoke about the MSP of farm product and farmers, but more than MSP, it is the middleman, farm traders, cartel, and their arm twisting tactics, which affect the farmers more. Is there any solution in sight for this menace? And do you think government should invest heavily on cold storages and proper supply chain management direct to farmers and
There are 2-3 things that are being asked there. The one reason why a low proportion of farmers has access to procurement agencies is because of all the things that this person has correctly said. That is the middlemen, the farmer traders, and all of it is an issue of working capital. I mean, my publisher would love for me to say that, please read my book, I've answered exactly what to do about it. But I won't say that. I think there is a way of, I have spoken about this in my book, but I think that's why I like some of the startups who are doing that, which I mentioned in the end. They are trying to disintermediate by providing financial access, better seeds, etc. It is happening in small pockets. It needs to happen in larger pockets. And that's why I say today, if you just raise MSP, it may not go to the farmers you want it to go to.
There's another question from one of the viewers from live webinar. Due to COVID-19, emotional and economic backlash against Asia, against China is expected. As already a number of countries are initiating action against this. Should Indian business with supply chain passing through China need to keep this China blacks in mind and insulate themselves and build alternatives?
I have nothing to say. Look, I think human memories are short. So I think a lot of the should, could, would will happen now. I tend to remain more skeptical.
What's your view on should India and Indian business need to try to become a contract manufacturing of the world post-COVID, just like China did, because we have got a great opportunity when all the countries are looking, countries other than China to make their investment?
No, but that's what I said, right? I mean, like building supply chains is an expensive proposition. And when companies are looking at this, and when I'm looking at my second book on water, this is what I found. They look at water and climate risks very, very seriously. And for India, those are large. So when, the government is going to put an avalanche of money at us, right? When you put that avalanche, put it into things which will last you for 5 years or 10 years, right? So keep climate and water risks in mind, because that is what people will also invest in. Like a Japanese company will not put a plant in a place that could get flooded or will run out of water.
There's another question which will be quite interesting. Please share your thoughts on climate change, global warming due to global lockdown. Should there be a global lockdown periodically if creating a better overall environment around? I think we need a regular pandemic.
No, that's the easy way out. I think, it'll create a backlash. Some of the things that I've been thinking about is human response is so unpredictable. Like after the pandemic and World War I, you would think that everybody's frightened and would stay at home. But then we got the roaring 20s where everybody lived for the moment and let risk go haywire. So, I don't think, locking down periodically is a great way. Europe shuts down for 3 weeks in August to go on vacation. I mean, their economy supports that. But our economy doesn't.
There are views expressed by a few leading industrialists. They said now it's between 21 and 60 round which really get impacted, and the government should really permit those sort of people to go and work so that our productivity doesn't stop and the earning capacity doesn't stop. So how do you balance it between the government responsibility to protect the lives and not to spread virus, as well as the industrial anxiety to open their facilities as quick as possible and migrant labor don't suffer? How do you balance between all the three?
That's the whole thing, right? We're dealing with selective dashboardism. We're just looking at that one dashboard of COVID deaths. Sorry, I'm going to just say one word in Hindi. Nama Hindu obituary daily kalayila padikra mari thaan. Okay, it's like the people who read the Hindu obituaries will go and see this COVID, they go on refreshing and seeing how many people died and what are the number of cases. But what we need to do is actually look at a dashboard with various things, right? When I look at a daily report in the company, I look at different parameters. I just don't look at one parameter. So I think we need to optimize across multiple parameters, which is something we're not doing now. We're all like, our whole imagination is caught up with just this one parameter. I think if we use multiple dashboards there and look at optimizing across all of them, we'll get an answer. But to your point on 21 to 61, that's why antibody tests are so important. Already we just got news that this whole batch used by Rajasthan and Tamil Nadu were completely. We have the capability to produce these. Well, why are we importing? We should be doing our own. It's a great competitive advantage.
There's a question from Mr. James from Salem. He's asking, our traditional naturopathy and Ayurvedic medicine system is saving us, are going to save us in the future. Your opinion, and we keep hearing they will come and rightful handy in these difficult circumstances.
No, I think, look, I have nothing to say except do the trials, no? Just do trials. You're trying every other drug. You can try this as well. Do controlled, randomized, controlled, double-blinded trials. And if it yields, positive results, more strength to it. But do the trials. You can't let it go without the trials. That's all I'm saying. That's not correct. But by all means, do the trials.
There's another question from one of our people from Vietnam. It is believed that the virus outbreak is the result of some experiments at the lab at Wuhan, which have gone wrong. Even though China refused the charge, there seems to be such a possibility anytime in future too. Should the world community and the UN look at such threats closely and take preventive measures? I think US President has taken quite a bit of measures on this, and including at the World Health Organization. I know it's not related to your topic, but it's all impacting our future.
I have no idea. I have nothing to say to that.
Now you are coming from the industry where textile industry. Now this is the time industry. What do you think? Because some of the economists, some of the political leaders said the GST across the board should be cut down by 5% actually, so that there's a lot of relief. So what do you expect the government should offer in terms of the textile industry in particular, and in general, what should be the general outlook of the ministry, central government to support the industry at these difficult times?
See, again, this is what I talked about. I think, you're going to put in a lot of money now, and everybody's going with a begging bowl. And I think, when you start giving money, keep some thinking for, something that will work 5 to 10 years from now. That's why I said, a lot of money can go into circular economy, in building up waste and water resilience, local resilience, etc. Just cutting taxes, raising taxes is fine. I think personally, what I would say would be really helpful is working capital support, because many of us are maxed out on that. I think, many countries around the world are paying for some part of, the wages, and ESI enrolled wages is one part of that. But I think apart from temporary temporary help, when you look at permanent, more substantial stimulus, I think we really need to look at medium-term resilience. And I think building water and climate resilience is very important thing. It's a good opportunity. You're not going to get this again.
Another question is again generic. A lot of discussions are already happening on this. US has accused WHO of not doing enough to warn the community sufficiently in advance and played hand in glove with the Chinese administration. Do you think who could have actually handled it better?
Look, I have no locus standi to say anything on this, so I will not say anything on this.
So one of the members, since you are an angel investor and you know where to invest at the right time, you want to know, madam, in which sector there's a prosperity for India and better investment and for the individual who want to invest?
Yeah, I think, I think angel investments, always look at it as charity plus, because most times you won't get your money back, number one. Number two, I only put money in climate related investments. So water, waste, I think they're very good things to put money in. I look at it, some pollution, anti-pollution things that company is doing fabulously. Some of these agri-tech, people who work with farmers, try to help farmers find access, gain credit. I like those. Some mobile technology, smart mobility, etc. is a great thing to put money in. But those are my preferences because that's what I understand. But but be very, very, cash is king today, nothing else.
We got another 2-3 minutes to go. We'll let you go. I got 2 more questions, which I'll ask you before we let you go. I know you're quite busy and writing the next book. In your opinion, after this pandemic comes to a close, however long that may be, what should be the first step as a global community take so that we are better prepared for the next pandemic? Lessons learned from the pandemic.
See, one thing I said in the very beginning is, this is an RNA virus. Okay, that's a known about this. The other known is almost every RNA virus is zoonotic, which means it just jumped from animal to man. So this particular coronavirus, I said, is broadly believed to have jumped from a pangolin to a human being. Okay, the last SARS coronavirus jumped from a civet, which is a jungle cat, to a human being. Both of these are believed to have happened in wet markets. So to me, I think, look, the world cracking down on wildlife crime or wildlife trafficking, being looking very hard at wet markets would be a no-brainer.
One last question before we let you go, madam. You live in a net zero waste house. Maybe you would like to share some inputs. Maybe a lot of our viewers watching this program can follow this, which is good for the nation, good for themselves. They save a lot of money, I suppose.
No, so we save money by being net zero waste. Net zero waste is, we brought down our waste by about 95%, but we don't have people who will take some of these packaging covers from us. So I think we were generating about 17 kilos of waste about 5 years ago. Today we send out about 200 to 300 grams of waste, and we take in waste from outside. We used to take in waste from a corporation dustbin, but those fellows started their own compost. So they said, no, madam, we won't give you waste. So we have several composting pits, and we have a biogas plant at home. And that was the real game changer because we save about a cylinder a month. So that's what it is.
Oh, quite interesting, madam. So one more question has come. Still, I got 2-3 minutes to go. I think I'll take this opportunity to ask you this question. Madam, the current economic scenario doesn't augur well for NGOs who depend upon contribution from the corporate world. What kind of impact it would have on the functioning of NGOs, and what are NGOs to do for their survival? It's quite an interesting question, and it's an issue.
Yeah, I don't know whether it doesn't augur well, right? I think cash is going to be king and everybody is going to be conserving cash. So this is going to be a shakeout. And I think, I have no specific advice to give, but a general advice is provide value. Value never goes out of style. See, I mean, look, I think MMA, for instance, you guys just keep doing talks, etc., right? So you'll always stay in style.
One more last question. I think I keep extending. This is genuinely really last question. Now, in these difficult times, you have a large number of employees. how do you keep that morale high under the difficult circumstances? Because there will be so much of uncertainty in them. What one thing entrepreneurs should do to keep the morale high up in respect of their employees?
Again, I don't have an answer to this, but I have a hypothesis, and this is a real request to the government. It's very difficult. This is difficult as it is, right? There's a virus, there's a lockdown. But if we get conflicting orders, many in the course of a few hours, it's very difficult to respond. You know, I mean, on day 1, I tell my employees something. On day 15, I tell them something. On day 20, I tell them something. Then on day 20, I have to change my message 4 times in a day. I think, you know, I think we need some gaps before, you know, shifts in orders. I totally understand this. I can understand that 500 different pushes and pulls. I respect the police who are putting themselves in harm's way. But I think, you know, if we can have a little more time to communicate and plan, that will be great. I think, you know, you have to, I think you have to be empathetic. You have to keep communicating, because nature abhors a vacuum. So if, you know, your leader doesn't communicate, WhatsApp will fill the void. So you have to keep communicating.
Yes, one good.
And be as open and honest as you can, when you can.
Important. Keep communicating. Thank you so much, madam, for sparing your valuable time. It's always a great pleasure to listen to you. Thank you, Mr. Peter, for joining us. Thank you, Pankaj, also for joining us. All the viewers who have joined this program live on webinar, YouTube, and Facebook, and also on our Zoom, please keep sharing. This recording of this event is available at our website. You can watch them anytime for next 1 year. Keep joining. You have been a great participant. I request you to please share your appreciation for Mridula Ramesh for the excellent lecture what she had delivered just a while ago by just typing in your inbox message box, hi, an awesome lecture. All the viewers who are watching the program live from other sources, as usual, please send you a mail. Your feedback is very, very important for us, so that we design and we brief the speakers accordingly. What is your expectation? These uncertain times require some innovative thinking and innovative speakers, which you have lined up till 3rd of May. Some excellent speakers. Please do watch in and keep watching, keep learning, and stay safe. Enjoy yourself. Thank you, Mridula Ramesh, for joining us. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good night. Thank you, all viewers. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Good night, and stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.